Good morning, guys. I am here live with Julie Moss with a discussion around pain. And before we get started, and let me know if you can see, you can hear me. We were having some mic issues just a second ago. So drop me a little, yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can hear or see you guys. And we can move on. So, Julie, really quick before we get started, where are you streaming live from?
I am streaming from the UK. I'm in a little place called Rosendale in Lancashire in the UK.
What's it called?
Rosendale in Lancashire.
Lancashire. Okay.
Yeah. If you're in the UK, that will make sense. If you're in Lancashire, the Rosendale bit will make sense, perhaps.
I have not heard of that town. And it's funny because, Okay, yes, you can hear us. Awesome, Maria. Thank you. When I was in the UK, it's funny. I don't realize, like, I always just call everything London. I call everything England or London. And then I was like, okay, oh, wait. Oh, yeah. The UK was much bigger than just England and London. And as I was traveling across the country, it was like, oh, okay, I can't no longer call everything London or England.
No.
So where are you compared to London?
So I'm at the other end on the west side. So I'm kind of up near Blackpool area.
Okay.
Manchester, close to Manchester.
Okay, Manchester I've heard of, yes.
There you go. Most people know about Manchester. I'm a bit above Manchester. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
So guys, we are streaming live also on our YouTube channel. So if you need to watch the replay, you can always watch it there. But I have we're just going to do a discussion style conversation. You guys are welcome to ask questions. We are talking a lot about pain because when Julie and I were talking a couple weeks ago, there was some issues that you were having with just getting pet parents on board to actually even listening is what you said, right? Yeah. So tell me a little bit about why did you want to focus your training on around pain? Where did that all start from? But before we do that, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Julie, as you probably know now. I started off doing behaviour work and then went into T-Touch and then did physio. So now I do a little bit of everything merged together. I don't really know what hat I'm wearing on what day. Sometimes they're all the same. So I don't know what you'd call me. I don't have a specific title. I'm just this dog therapist who does a few different things. But at the minute, I'm starting to focus more on the pain side and musculoskeletal side of dogs.
And are people referring clients to you based on their experience of like when they're working with the dog, like, oh, my dog, this dog particular. So you're getting referrals from other trainers or pet parents coming straight to you, or both?
I'm getting pet parents bring the dogs for physio if they've been told by somebody else that they need it or they think they need it. Some other trainers bring their dogs for physio. Pet parents bring their dogs for behaviour and sometimes end up with physio. So it really varies. Trainers come for advice on cases, for reports about their cases. So it's in all directions, really.
Nice. So when you say physio, what are you saying?
Physiotherapy. So in the US, that's probably canine conditioning or rehab. It's more of a rehab terminology. I can't remember what the specific term is, but yeah, rehab professionals, I think you have.
All right, Facebook user, this is exactly why we're talking about this. Pet parents have such a hard time accepting that their dog is in pain. It's exactly what Julie said. I'm like, okay, we need to have a discussion because as an industry of trainers and behaviorists, we know that it's important, but if our pet parents aren't going to listen, we're not going to be able to move past this, right? So especially with younger dogs, even though their vets tell them the dog is fine. Yes, I hear that a lot. In fact, I worked really closely with Julie a couple months ago because when I was in the UK, I got a call from my husband who said, Bentley's not moving. He's literally whining every time he moves. And he's whimpering, which is not like him at all. He's such a little tough cookie. So I was able to get him into a vet who couldn't tell us where it was coming from. That was my thing. Like, where is it coming from? Is it his shoulder? Is it in his lower back? I'm thinking maybe he pinched a nerve, because and of course it happens literally 24 hours after I leave. So I have that whole thing. But when I got back, I called Julie right away, and she was able to work with me virtually, which was really cool. And through a series of conversations, we were able to bring her report over to a specialist, and they were able to figure out exactly what was going on. And now he is much, much better. So,
Yay.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so let me ask you some questions. So first of all, what kind of study did you research or sign up for when you first go, okay, you know what, I'm going to specialize my learning on this? Like, we all have something that we want to learn a little bit more about. For me, I love technology or camera, so I'll learn more about that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
what did you actually research to find out what you were going to dive into when it came to this subject?
Well, I didn't. I kind of did the studies which brought me to here. So whilst I was doing the behavior work, I've always been quite holistic and complementary and looking at everything. So I've never just focused on one thing. And I just felt like I wasn't getting to the bottom of a lot of cases. So then I went and did T-Touch, which really gets you to observe again and again and again. It just takes you through that situation again and again. So then you start to see a lot of things. And then when you start to see the things, then you want to know, what are the things that you're seeing and how are they relevant? So then I went on to do physiotherapy, because then I wanted to fix the things that I could see and be a bigger part in that. So and then you start realizing, when you start seeing, when you've practiced this observation stuff for a few years, then you see it all over the place and you realize the scale of the problem. Then you feel that it needs addressing, and that's where I am now.
How did you go about getting certified as a physiotherapist? Is that a program? Is that a schooling? What is that?
Yeah, there was only, when I started doing, there was one course here, and I did that, but I wasn't very happy with it. I came out thinking there were some things about it that I just didn't feel it was good enough. So then another one had been released, which was a level 7. So I then went and did another one. So I paid to do 2, one after the other. In fact, they overlapped a little bit at the ends, but that was far better. That went far deeper and gave you a better understanding of everything. So I qualified twice.
Wow.
2 different courses.
And are these courses things that you are diving into with cases that you're working on, like side by side? Like, are you able to take in the information and then practice it with the dogs you have in front of you? Or was it all just like information into your head and you're not actually using it?
I think you use it. I probably used it on my T-Touch cases, because I was heavily involved with T-Touch stuff and my behavior cases. So I probably started to build in the observations as I went and start looking for it, but I wasn't very confident that I was seeing it very well. It takes a bit of practice. So it took me a while to warm up and feel confident that I could say that that's what I was seeing, because I kept thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if it's in my head and I think I'm seeing it and everybody's told me stuff? So I think the time was taken just watching my dogs, other people's dogs, referencing against dogs that you knew had a problem, and what did you see when you looked at them, and just almost like just practicing again and again and again and again, so you got good at it. And there's no real shortcut to the practice in a lot of ways. You've just got to keep looking for things. So there are certain things, if you know what to look for, but you get better at seeing them. And when I was at physio training, they were parading dogs past us one day to do gait analysis. And there was one, and there was another, and there was about 5 dogs. And by the end of it, I was just thinking, I can't see anything. I can't do this thing. I can't see these things that they keep talking about, or I'd see some of it, but not all of it. And I'd come from T-touch, where you look at everything. You don't home in on a foot or an ear or anything.
Oh, I
You look
see.
at the
Okay.
whole dog. And I found it really hard trying to section off the dog and look at little bits. And in the end, I didn't do that. I kind of withdrew from that, went away, just thought, well, it'll probably come with practice, which it did. But I just learned my own way of doing it, which is to basically go away and slow it down, and don't try and do it there in the moment, because you will never get it all. You just can't do it.
So you like to set up a camera maybe in slow motion and then be able to capture. Okay. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about, so there's a few trainers on here listening, and we can put something together to help out. But what is it that you're looking for specifically? What is it that we as trainers want to like hone in on when we're doing some kind of assessment just in our head, not necessarily with the pet parent? So are you
So
looking at the gait?
yeah, I'm looking at how they move, and maybe listening to see if their feet are scuffing the floor, or if they trip over the edges of mats. If they pull like a train on the lead, and they really struggle to not do that. You know, if you have a hard time doing lead work on the lead, then that can be a real sign. If you see them jumping up on things, how do they do it? Are they in a triangle shape? Do they stretch right through? When they're interacting with objects, do they turn both ways? Can they lift their head? So if you set up your environment to see this, you can set up things to see how they deal with that. Are they fidgety? Can they not settle? Are they very vocal? It can really look like anything. But if we just focus, as far as behavior goes, if we focus on the movement, if you look closely, they may always rest one leg out to the side or at a different angle to the others. They may hold their back legs underneath them as opposed to slightly behind. They may turn their elbows out. They may hold their head at a funny angle. It's really sort of looking at the posture and seeing what do they keep doing. If they do it once, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. But if they keep doing the same thing every time they pull up or do a certain thing, then you make a note of it.
So you're setting up some kind of like a ace-free setup or something that's causing the dog to put their paws up, put their paws down, spin around, put their head down, put their head up, maybe one foot in front of the other. You're watching all of this and you're looking for any kind of pattern that you kind of see that's going to stand out. Okay. And then when you see that pattern of, how are you comparing it to what it's supposed to look like? Do you have a comparison? Do you have like a neutral, this is what it should be, and this is what this dog is doing in your head? Or is it something that you've learned?
I guess the details like the feet and things, they should be able to stand square. And if they can't do that, then why can't they do that? Because they should be able to. Sometimes it can be a conformation problem, that just that the way they're made means they can't do things. So there may be two different breeds of dog that don't work very well. I've seen a few of the cattle dogs actually that look so much different at the back than the front. And that's got to cause some difficulty moving. So it's really how much is genetic in that they're just built not in the best way, and how much is that they really are struggling to do something. But even if they're not built in the best way, that may be causing them pain doing certain activities. So it's kind of all the same, really. How well do they move?
How well do they move? Okay.
Yeah.
And from there in your head, because you're not going to give all of this to the pet parent yet. If it was a genetic reason why they're standing a certain way, maybe just the irregularity of the front and the back, lengths and stuff, you could probably predict that these might be the things that could possibly happen in the future. Therefore, these are the things you want to like start using a ramp, make sure your dog's not jumping up or down, like that kind of thing, right? That verbiage could happen in your training and can transfer over.
Yeah, because you're still looking at how they're moving, and does it look easy? Do they look like they find things easy? Do certain things look difficult or stiff and uncomfortable? How fluid are they? It's just how well do they seem to be using their bodies, and is it pain or is it just they're not built very well? But either way, If they're not moving well, it means they're overusing places and underusing others, which is going to cause wear and eventually is likely to cause pain. So it's still things to look at. And they will find things difficult in life, like tackling certain things, and they won't be an agility dog because they're going to batter themselves trying to do the things that a dog that's built well will do.
Yeah.
So there may be restrictions on how they can interact with the world.
Or it's going to cause them a lot of, like, in my case with Bentley, he had a double hop on a spin that you picked up. We noticed that there was one side more dominant than the other. One
Yeah.
side, he was like, his whole mouth would open and he'd have this flowing look and he would be so proud of himself. But what you picked up on from recording in slow motion is that he would get to about 3/4 of the way through the spin, and then he would literally pick up both his paws and put it into the end position, because that is always where I delivered the mark and reward. And
Yeah.
you picked up on the fact that that stiffness is what caused that hop. Meanwhile, I'm thinking it's the cutest thing in the world because he's, so proud of himself. And I remember from a very young age, he did that. He had that, like, the one foot slightly in the back, one paw slightly in front of the other, and he'd always pick them up on one specific side and do that little, we
Right.
called it a bunny hop.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And that can be
now,
a deeper, yeah,
yeah,
that can be a deeper thing. Or it can be that maybe they learned something a certain way and it's become a habit to do everything similar that way, in which case you can do proprioceptive work and you can retrain the gait. And maybe it's just that. Maybe it's just a habit thing that they do.
right.
We all do
Something that
that.
you accidentally reinforce and they're like, "Oh, that's cool,"
Yeah.
or a combination. I mean, either way, it's not helping him have that fluid movement in those lower
Yeah.
back. So other questions I want to ask you is, and guys, feel free to ask questions along the way. So when we were talking, you were saying you were struggling with, like, pet parents even listening to the conversation. So then I just asked you a couple minutes ago, before we went live, and this was really good, is when you first talk to a pet parent and you're taking in all of their information and you notice, oh my goodness, this dog's gait, this movement, you said to me that you don't tell them right away, right?
It does depend. I remember one particular client who come to me. I don't really know how they got to me because they're not really my client, but I'm very glad they did. And immediately when their dog came in, there was so many issues, but they obviously were oblivious to this. So to go right in with that would not have served me well. Plus, one of the partnership was very old school, so I had to overcome that as well. And
Yeah.
she was convinced the dog was stubborn and not doing things, so I kind of knew I had a lot of work to do that day. So I had to broach it on the first session. This dog was so bad that I couldn't leave it, but I'd have rather left it till I'd got them on board a little bit more, because one half was very resistant. So I did my best with what I had that day. But unfortunately, they did go to the vet, but the half with the resistance was always fighting this because she wanted to believe the dog was stubborn so she could be right about this. But the dog was actually pretty crippled. So we did get that dog to a vet, but she fell out with me over the whole situation. And sometimes it just doesn't work out, but you get them to a vet. And then other people, you mention a few things and they're listening. They're seeing the observations that you're pointing out and saying, it's interesting that he never goes round that chair from that side. He always does that. Does he do that at home? Does he ever go under chairs at home? And get them thinking and wondering about how much they don't see.
Yeah.
And you just keep asking these questions. So how much do you not know right now, just by asking the questions? And then you may tell them if you feel that's sinking in. I've
I
seen this
love that.
before.
That's a great approach to getting them to kind of think about this themselves. Asking them a question just like that, that is brilliant, and that will work very
Yeah.
effectively for most people.
It's getting
Well
them
done.
thinking and looking at their dog. And well, doing what I do is observing the dog. They don't do that. They see the big problems. They don't see the little things. So it's, yeah, yeah, we
That's
are
true,
speaking on that.
Zoe. It's true that we do have to advocate for the dog, but do you hear Julie say that you have to meet the pet parent? They're the ones with the wallet. They're the ones that are making the decisions. So when you're coming with someone who's not listening, so if you've said something 2 or 3 times and they're still just like either talking over you or um, ignoring you completely, what is your go-to, Julie? What do you do at that point when you know that this has got to do with more than just behavior and it's not the dog being stubborn? Um, what is it that you've found that has worked and where are you struggling?
So one that I just had recently, a couple of nice guys who came with a collie, and straight away I saw there were signs. They weren't really obvious, but they were there. And I did mention it on the first session, but they couldn't see it. So it was hard for them. They weren't arguing with me about it. They'd made an appointment for the vets in a few weeks, but I think deep down they were just thinking, okay, we'll just do what she says because that's what we're here for. And then it was about the third or fourth session we were doing road work. We hadn't done up till then because we were doing inside stuff that they wanted to work on. So we went and did the road work. And as I'm walking behind taking footage, I'm just taking footage of this dog while I was there just to get
And they're
it.
thinking, oh, you're recording all this nice loose leash walking. Yeah.
I told them why. I just said, while we're here, I might as well get this so I can watch it later. And then as we were watching, the dog had been out for about 15 minutes and you could really see the hips starting to get really stiff. So I'm walking behind with one while the other guy's walking the dog, I pointed it out. I said, can you see now can you just see that the hips? And I said, really clunky. Could you see them just like
Good word.
bumping up and down?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah. He said, and clunky is a really good word because I can see it now. And I've never seen this before. I said, well, you've never walked behind probably and looked before, and been focused. So after that, they pushed the appointment with the vet. We're not there yet. It's taken a while to get people in vets at the minute. But he really saw it that day, and it was a little bit of a light bulb moment. And it made me think probably whatever we're working on, I should go and do a short road work, somewhere in the first or second session, just for the sake of it. Let's just see what they do outside.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't want to because it's not in their best interest, but I may find a way to do it. So that worked really well because once he saw that, because it became obvious as the dog got tired, and he'd never seen that before. So then he was told.
So recording in slow motion behind them and showing them either paw, knees, hips, how the tail moves, all of that stuff could give them that light bulb moment. But maybe there is something going on. You know what, Julie, I just did recently that was pretty effective. I filmed the pet parent walking.
Yeah.
Because I came from a physical, I came from the personal training side. Yeah. And I said, look how your gait, how one leg is long. He said, I had a hip replacement. And I said, oh, imagine taking your gait right now and running on it. Or how about if you gain 30 pounds and you run on it? What do you think will happen to the rest of your body, your hips, your knees, your ankles, and all of that? So what I did was take what was going on with the dog. And I was like, this is what's going on with you. And he had that light bulb moment just like that. It just is like, oh, yeah. Okay. So yeah, it can trickle down to our dogs. So just another.
And I think that's maybe if you can get in via the person and personal experience, then that helps as well. It does depend on the person in front of you. And
of course, yeah.
How best will they receive this information? And you maybe need to talk to them a little while first to figure out what they hear, what they screen out, and then come at it from the bit that they hear.
So strategy wise, when you're bringing up, you're working with a case of with someone, first session should all be kind of just observation, letting them talk, finding where they're, where summarizing everything that they're saying at the very end, but not necessarily addressing the pain issue right away, making those questions, creating those questions that make them kind of think about it. And then by the second or third session, if you're building that rapport a little bit more, now you can be a little more direct on here's what I'm seeing, or take a look at this, giving them a comparison. Now, that part's great. You're making them aware. Now, here's the part that can be challenging is how do we get them enrolled in taking action and taking it to their vet? And let's not even talk about the vet stuff yet, because that's another whole issue. But how do we get them to take action, to go, you know what, there might be an issue that you're not seeing, and it's coming from this area right here. So take me through that conversation with them.
So first you have to go through the whole, yes, but he runs in the park. Yes, but he still does this. Yes, but he's still able to do that, and explain why. That dogs have 4 legs. And when we're lame, it's really obvious because we only have 2. When they're lame on one leg, they can throw that weight somewhere else and you don't see it. They can do this for a long time because they work differently to us. So you go into that a little bit as to why. And they may come back with, well, he still does this, he still does that. And you kind of combat a few of those things just to get them thinking. There can be many difficulties with this because it depends what the resistance is. So they may feel a bit insulted that you're accusing them of being a bad pet parent because they haven't noticed their dog's in pain. So they don't want to accept that or believe it because that makes them feel bad that they didn't notice. I would know if my dog's in pain. I live with them every day. And as you're saying it, these flashing images are going through their head about the agility course they did last week, the beast, and they're just thinking, oh my God. So maybe they need time without judgment for you to just, it's really difficult to see. Most people don't see it. We have to work very hard to see it. Your vet struggles to see it, and just kind of put them at ease with that.
It is. Yeah. What if you told them that dogs don't show pain the way that we think that they show pain, and it shows up in these kind of things that you're actually calling me about, like pulling on the leash or jumping, in this explosive way, or simply, showing their teeth every time you come near them, those might be reasons, or you're addressing them with a harness and they're backing away. The things you've called me for is how they might show that they're in discomfort or pain. That might be
I use my example. I have migraines periodically, and there's like 4 hours in the run up where at the beginning of that 4 hours, I probably look relatively normal and I may just be functioning pretty well. I might look a little tired. That might be the perception, but I don't announce it to everybody. So by the end of that 4 hours, I'm looking a little different because I feel quite sick. So then I'm probably moving different and actually acting different because it's more severe. If you asked me in that 4 hours, are you okay? Is there something wrong? I might say, well, I've got a bit of a headache and it's building up steam. And so, yeah. And then they'd understand. But if a dog's acting a little bit off and maybe just sitting quietly in a corner or looks a bit tired, looks a bit strained, oh, we had a heavy day yesterday. Do they ever ask the dog and say, are you okay? Is there something wrong? And they point to their head and say, yes, it's really sore. They don't do that, but we can do that. So we all do it. We all cope with a certain degree of discomfort until we can't, and then we show it. And you just ask them to think about people in the family or themselves. What are you like when you've got pain? If there's something that recurs for them, they're really familiar with their own pattern or their person's pattern. Oh, yeah, my husband, when his hip's playing up, he's never in a good mood, and how do you know that? Because he makes it very clear. He tells you, you know the signs. But the only way you know it is because he's told you at some point.
Right.
But with a dog, they wouldn't be able to say, yeah, my right hip's really giving me grief today. They don't do that. So if you don't understand, if you don't know how to interpret the way they're behaving, you'll see it as something different because you're not hearing anything to inform you of anything different, which is why then I go into why you end up with these behavior problems and why you come here, why it matters that we deal with these things. So it kind of comes full circle for them then, because then the penny drops that, it's behavior. That's how it works.
Nice.
So what do you do when you've got a headache? What's your signs outwardly?
That's a great question. And that's really good point, because it'll help them really comprehend that and say, okay, yeah, for sure.
And some people will carry on and work through things and just bust through it and show no signs, and other people fall over at the first sign. ill
I've seen
because
it.
they just can't do it.
Yeah, my husband, if he gets sick, oh my gosh, it looks a lot different for me. I'm like, I'm gonna work for 3 hours and I'm just gonna rest for a second. For him, it's like he can't even get out of bed.
There you
All right.
go. So different levels of tolerance.
Yes. We're going to ask questions about the vet in just a second. Guys have some great questions here. So let's pull this one up. That is the hardest part, to tell the guardian the dog is suffering some kind of pain. And even if they go to the vet will tell them, yeah, do not find anything. That you're the stupid one. Yeah. Okay. Let's just jump to it, Julie, because this is what happened to me. Is the vet said, we can't find anything. His gait looks great. And I told my husband, well, of course his gait looks great. He's at the vet. He's not going to be like, showing where his pain is. He's going to be like, what do I need to do? And he's pulling a treat in front of him, to get him to walk on the slippery floor. And that was the other thing, is they used a slippery floor to watch his gait. So my dog was very mindful of his stride. He wasn't going to go into his normal, walk on cloud kind of stride. So what do you tell the pet parent, Julie, who goes to the vet because you told them to, right? Or they say to you, oh yeah, she had a vet check, clear bill of health. I've had that one several times. If you don't get a chance to educate them on what to say to the vet, because I know you do, but if you didn't get that chance, what do you say to a pet parent who comes back with either, my dog got a clear bill of health last week or whatever, or yeah, that said he's totally fine, he's great. So it's just he's a stubborn dog. What do you say? What do you do?
I just
throw your hands up in the air.
I send them with ammo. So I used to just send them if I can send them to my vet, to my vet who I know, I don't have a problem, because I know if I say there's something there, they'll look and find it. But if I have to send them to their own vet, then I send them with video. I label the video. I point arrows to the things on the video. Say, see here? See this little hop in slow motion? Every time they do this stride, this happens. Every time they turn right, they skip a step. Every time they do this, blah, blah, blah. Coat changes. I just point at things on the video and on the photos. Less muscle on this side, asymmetry, all sorts of things. So then it gives them a lot more to look at. It's harder to ignore. They still sometimes say there's nothing wrong. But if they can't analyze the gait in situ, which they likely can't, and they can't do it that fast, you don't take it in. So I've done all that work for them. Okay. So they've got a nice slow motion video. They've got a summary. They've got photos all labeled up. And then they can go to the places that I'm indicating may be an issue. I don't exactly tell them where to look, because you've got to be careful. Yeah. But I suggest where the problems are, and it could be on the back of this or this. How about we have another look at the dog? Even then, sometimes they can just, I don't know, be adamant there's nothing there and that the report is rubbish. But most of the time, that does make them take it a little bit more serious, because you've actually given them the means to see it, instead of having a 10-minute consult in a little waiting room or up a corridor where the dog's not really being themselves anyway, and maybe covering pain more than usual because they're in a high adrenaline state. So I've done it when they're not, and pointed it out. So that's how I do it.
Love that. And as all of us, if we can do that for our pet parents, is put together at least an indication of it somewhere in this area, or this is exactly happening, equipping our pet parents with a video, letting them know, please show this video or these images to your vet, saying that there's something going on here. At least it makes, because the vets go in there going, I got like 700 patients today, and and it takes a long time to go through the process, first of all. Second of all, they're trying not to get bit, so they're trying to get in and out of there as fast as possible. So I love that idea. That's brilliant. And obviously, you're coming from you, it's going to be a lot different, because you're going to be like, it's specifically right here, like you did with my dog.
Yeah.
And just so you guys know, when I went to the vet with this diagram, my vet was very impressed, by the way, and he went through and he started feeling in those areas for what he could actually feeling moving Bentley's legs and bending the ankles. We thought it was like the lower back, but hip area. So he ended up sending me to a specialist, a neurologist, who is going to do like more of the test and a spine, like test on the spine. And through that specialist, who was also impressed with the diagram, and she's like, oh, this just is so much easier. And I just uploaded it to her. She had all of this before I arrived. So she went right in, took the x-rays and an MRI, and then said, you know what, it's a pulled psoas. This is where it's coming from, because it was the one area that explained the movement that you talked about. And it was also when he did touch on it, it was a little bit, he did a lip lick and he looked, you know, my dog specifically said, yep, that's the spot. Stop touching it, like that. So
Yeah.
it was so useful for myself to like have that kind of eyes on it. But the question is, how do we get that good at doing what you're doing? At least to a way that I can know what area it is. I would think, and I know you and I have been working together on this a lot, if there is a chart or diagram that us as trainers could have that says, go through, because in our head we can have a checklist, and you would be like, you know, boom, 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 boom. But for me, I'd be like, okay, first let me check out the gait, then let me check out the movement to the left or right. Let me set up this station so I can see how he goes when he puts his paws up, when he puts his paws down. So you do have a diagram in that you have made for us. I know in the past, right?
You can have a checklist of things that to look for. So it's where, how they stand. A lot is to do with how they stand, actually, how they rest, how they stand at rest. Whether feet are straight or whether feet are pointing in different directions, whether they rest one leg every time, it's always the same leg. Do they switch their elbows out to the side? Do they hang their head? Do they have their head at an angle? So you're looking for symmetry between both sides of the dog. Coat changes are really informative, because you quite often get a coat change in an area that's sore or overworked or strained. Now, it doesn't mean that that's the problem,
right?
But that may be where they're feeling it, or one of the areas they're feeling it. So that can give you some indicators as well. How they turn, how they stand up, sit down, how they get up, how they drop down. Do they lie on one side? Do they always lie on one side? Can they do a sphinx lie down or not? Can they not maintain it? So all these little things that posturally, how are they holding their posture? Can they not hold it square? Are they not symmetrical? Is one side different to the other? Is there less muscle on one over one hip than the other? You know, there will be signs of wear. If they're not using a leg, they're going to lose muscle on it. And it depends how long they've not been using it for, how severely they've not been using it. So you will be able to see outward signs. So having a checklist of these things that are visual, even without looking at how they move, can be a good start.
Okay. So I'm going to get that PDF from you, and I'll send it out on this page. So if you are here, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll upload it in the description. But what we'll do is click a link so you can have a checklist that you can run through with a bunch of your students, your current students, just to get in the practice of it. But Julie, just because we have a checklist and we're really good at doing that, the next thing that would be helpful is for you to help interpret what this could be, right? Because that's the stuff that, this looks different. This is not right. But to know it could be this, and this, that's where your education, this is where your experience comes in and can be helpful. Yeah.
So I had to learn how dogs move in detail. I had to understand how their bodies work and what should be happening and what shouldn't be happening. So I know which joints are supposed to open where and at what points, and which bits they're supposed to use when they're doing certain things, and which bits they shouldn't be using maybe as much. So I've got that knowledge, and I can look at video and photos and then say that that's not how it should be, because I've got that reference point in my head of what normal should look like. And it's all the moving parts of the body. It's a lot of things. It's all the joints that make up a one limb movement, which bit is not working well. So I can point to which bit by slowing it down. I can point to muscle loss. I can put that in a report, and I can do that for people to send to their vet. So if you're having difficulty with a client, I do that. I've been doing that for the last year, where I can put together a report. To do it yourself, you have to really understand how dogs move, which is another level of education, which is
the project that you're working on right now.
Yeah.
So Julie has several projects that she's working on. One of them being an education piece for us to learn how to do this at the most, I would say, intro level, novice level. And then you have a much more intensive training that can provide that kind of education for us that wants to learn this, to be able, to be able to do this the way that you do this so easily, reminds me of like how I was with my people training. You would walk in the room to say hi, and I was like, oh, okay, he's got a short shoulder and his rotator cuffs probably, like, I can totally, just by the way that you move, tell. But I've never even thought of transferring it over to a dog until I met you a couple years ago, and I was like, oh, this is very similar to my background. All right, we have some questions, so let's just go through some questions, and then let's go. So Janice again. Example, I took on reactivity client that on our initial call, I wrote in a big bold letters, my vet just wants to toss medication at him. Within 2 sessions, she was asking me about my experience in behaving medications. Dog was on meds the next day. Yeah. I see a lot of vets that just want to throw medication, and one, they want to get the dog to a state where they're not in that discomfort. True, right, Julie? I know you're frowning upon this.
Well, I just had it recently where I sent a dog back for a pain check, and there very obviously is something. And they came back on 2 types of, Prozac and Valium, I think they came back on, which we really didn't need. And to be fair, it's knocked the dog sideways. It's delayed what we were doing for 2 weeks. We still don't know where this pain is. The dog nearly fell down the stairs trying to function on these meds. It wasn't what we asked for. I don't know why they felt the need to do that. But I do know this vet has a habit of not receiving information well and making their own decisions. And they will get some people in life that are like that, some vets in life that are like that. I actually say to clients now, go back for a pain check. If they don't find anything, ask them for a pain relief trial. And that's something you can do. It won't necessarily give you all the answers, but it's a start.
Julie, what do you want them? Sorry to interrupt you. What do you want them to do? So in my case, X-ray and MRI.
Well, I want them to read the report first, and that would be helpful, the report that I've sent, and go off that, and not take the behavior thing into account, because they tend to make their own decisions. Because this guy watched a video, he started asking about behavior. And this is because one of their vet nurses actually has seen him for behavior before and didn't solve it. And this is why they didn't solve it. So there may be all sorts of reasons why this is a problem there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
They want to make it, me not right, potentially. So
I think telling the pet parents to please just go in there and specifically talk about the discomfort and pain on this report. Please don't bring up the behavior, because we both agree that this might be the reason why this is happening. So let's address this first, and then we'll come back here, put a pin in it, kind of thing.
Yes.
Maybe being a little more clear with our pet parents on what to say to the vet, so that they can get there, to not going in there, my dog is not, that whole conversation with them.
Yeah, okay. Because I think then they ask, why do you think there is pain? They say because they're behaving like this. Then they go off at a tangent, because that's easier to deal with. So if you say, no, I'm having that addressed, we're doing okay, it's looking promising, we're making headway, but we feel, and come back to that point, it depends how assertive people are with their vet. They tend to get in front of the vet and they'll just take whatever they give them because they get intimidated. So
I think giving them, the pet parent, the motivation, like this, here's what I would like for you to do, this information, even writing a report, say, just give this to your vet, a
Yeah.
handwritten note from you or something like that. So Kevin
Yeah.
wrote, this is a really good little piece of advice. Have to be careful not to attach all of the problem behaviors to the pain. The behavior may not go away when the pain goes away.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what? If you do that, you're most likely going to get a pet parent that's not going to listen to you. It's really important that when a pet parent is talking to you about behavior, that you are listening and even complimenting them, meeting them where their issues are with, listening to them, summarizing what's going on, complimenting their reasoning and the fact that they're here, they've contacted you, how important it is. In order for that pet parent who's struggling with that behavior problem to actually listen to you, you want to make sure that you compliment and you're, really rewarding them for bringing this to you before you just start attaching it to pain. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to that, Julie?
No, and it may not solve all the behaviors because some things are a habit based on a habit. We've got to unravel the whole thing. But will you ever have great success training that dog? If there's an underlying problem, you need to rule it out or consider it. And also, in the dog's interests, it's nice to spot these things early because you save yourself a lot of grief later on in life when they're really struggling. And then they wish somebody told them.
All right, here's a question. Instead of now, guys, anything to do with vet, each country is going to be a little different, right, on the way that we do things. So instead of sending them to a vet, could it be a better idea to go to chiropractor, chiropractitioner, or physiotherapist?
Yeah.
If you
Depends
can, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I was, I don't know if I was allowed to directly go to them, but I think I am. I don't have to go to a vet first and then go there.
Well, you have to, if you're going to treat the dog, you have to have a referral to see them here. So everybody has to have a vet referral to actually treat an animal, which is why I did the reports, because I don't have to touch that animal. So I can get them to me to get my side of the story in ahead of time without having to have a referral. So then you take that to the vets. So yes, it would be nice if they could come straight to here. But I can't do that. And then if you get the blockage in the middle where the vet then says there's nothing wrong, then they don't think they need one. So it's always this in the middle bit that's the problem. So the reports for me were an ideal way of going right over the top of that and giving the information that's visual. When I don't touch the dog, I don't need a referral because I'm not treating and I'm not advising. I'm just giving information. So yes, if you can get them to somebody you can get their hands on, but we have to remember some of these dogs you can't get your hands on. So you're still doing visuals.
Yeah.
But you can get them in person, you can see more. But, the whole issue is that a lot of them are not able to be handled, and you wouldn't just go in and do that. It's a difficult one because it depends what the dog's like and how they cope. So you're still using a lot of visuals to see it.
And that's what I love about working with you is that all of us trainers, pet parents, we can all have someone like Julie assess. I know that you don't want to have this kind of conversation, but like we can have you assess them and go, okay, there's an idea of it might be right here. Instead of having to put our dogs through the discomfort of going to a vet immediately, we can get some answers. So I love that. And that's why you are looking at putting a program together that can help bring more people in this industry to be able to do what you're currently doing.
Yeah, because I'd like to be able to get them to the vets with the information straight away from whoever they're going to, because I can't do everybody's. I don't see everybody's dog for them. So there's a lot of dogs slipping through the net because they're not seen, because nobody knows about this stuff. And people are trying to train them and they're not understanding why it's not working. And that's hard on them because then you get disillusioned because you don't get your results. You don't know why. It's better to just see it.
So you would like to have more trainers do this type of training where they're maybe they're coming from a reactive, like pet parents that have reactive dogs. They're taking that, and then they're basically being able to be the in between what before they go to a vet, so that the dog's not having to make all these different appointments.
Yeah.
Right.
And because it wouldn't come up otherwise. It doesn't come up until that dog is visibly lame, which is a lot later. They can be behaving badly for years. They may end up being put to sleep way before because of that behavior, but actually it could have been helped. But if you don't know if every time they do a certain activity, they get a really sharp pain in their hind limb, it's invisible, but it happens. And if nobody sees that, it's like this erratic behavior, but it's not. There's always a cause for behavior, and it can be hard to establish why, as we know. But if there is some underlying pain, and we need to be able to see it. Otherwise, what happens then? You can't fix it.
Now, we talked earlier on about not just reactivity, but puppies and adolescent dogs. So just really quickly, tell me the difference between what you see with a puppy that has an off gait or something compared to an older dog. What would you think in your head? Maybe not what you say, but tell us a little bit about that.
So with puppies, it's difficult because they're very clumsy. They're not very coordinated, and they're very heedless. They just go off and do things. So they're still growing. They're still developing. They've just not got it together yet. But you may notice little things that when you try and teach them sit, they can't sit. Maybe they hover. Maybe they stick a leg out to the side every time. Maybe they lie down oddly. Just little observations. When you're trying to do basic training with them, these basic postures, they can't do it consistently or at all. And why is that? So I have seen that. Obviously, again, behavior. I remember one puppy that was hysterical, couldn't cope with life at all. At 8 weeks old, had come from a farm. You assume it's because they've seen nothing, had no socialization. But over the months, and by 4 months of age, I was suspicious that this dog didn't look right. That was the dog that drove me to push harder on this, because I didn't quite believe myself, because it was a young dog. I kept second guessing, but things didn't look right. There was a big stripe down his back. His legs were very straight and stiff. And he'd just been like this since a puppy, screaming his head off, not coping with the world. And he eventually was diagnosed with luxating patellas and hip problems at the same time.
Wow.
So they put him on a pain med. He went on holiday on the pain med, and he behaved so awfully on the holiday that they came home and put him to sleep, just as we'd found out what was going on. And I was so frustrated with me and everything, because I thought if I just pushed harder at the beginning, even if I was wrong, even if I saw something and it was just a gangly puppy, but his whole behavior, and I look back on other dogs I've seen over the years that have come into the puppy classes I did, that were trying to climb out the window for silly things, really hysterical, and you think, oh, how many of those had something going on at that age?
Wow.
So that's when I just thought, we can't have this. We can't be letting this go on,
So what do you say to a pet parent who has a dog like that? What is some of the verbiage that the conversations you would say at that point? Because you're just wanting to make them aware of it, not necessarily having them go and get an MRI or X-rays or anything like that.
Yeah, it depends on the degree of the behavior. I mean, if I see one that's quite extreme as a puppy, I would just get them checked now. I don't care what anybody says, just you've got to look, because that's not normal. It could just be extreme fear, but maybe it's not. Maybe there's more. And I've seen it again and again, actually, since in young dogs, up to 6 months, that young, kind of hysterical behavior where they're not coping. Wow. So I would just say, in my experience, I've seen this many times. This isn't normal behavior for this age. You need to consider the possibility of this. And I tell them stories of, I had a German Shepherd who looked absolutely fine, and at 6 months of age was jumping up at people and being really hostile. That one had hip dysplasia, but you could hardly see it. You could barely see it. Even I was thinking, I don't know if it's got problems or not. It's so invisible, but I'm going to send it back based on the behavior. And Yeah, hip dysplasia. Very severe hip dysplasia. And he'd been checked once by that same vet.
Oh, wow.
Because they rang me up and said, "What did you see?" I said, "Well, I just watched the dog walk past the window outside. I couldn't actually get near the dog. And I just saw that the movement was slightly irregular. The dog was so tense anyway, you kind of question, well, is it just tension? But it's just not normal to be like that. It's a combination of things. It's hard to explain concisely.
Yeah.
So I tell them those stories and say, well, there was this one and that one. And I just have a suspicion, keep an eye on it.
Your approach is very gentle. I love it. You're going to get pet parents that are, because they're all coming from a place of just probably exhaustion and everything once they get to you. So let's read this message. It's too long, so just read it to yourself and then you can respond if you'd like. So this is a vet assistant, okay?
He is really supporting me. Working with clients might be rooted in pain component, yes, especially in rescue. Yeah, rescue is a very good place because why are they there? Noticed an event with a foster dog that got up from a sit very slowly. The foster was not even aware, and she told me he was raised outdoors. Yeah, it is putting a few different things together and wondering if it's pain. We're not saying it definitely is. And even if they've got an issue, there may not be severe pain all the time. We don't know. We can never experience anybody else's pain. And that's the same with humans. Two people can have exactly the same problem and feel the pain very differently. It's so subjective. It will always be a slippery thing to nail down and say, yes, that dog is in that degree of pain. We'll never know unless we have some magical equipment that appears. So it's always going to be slightly subjective. And so because we don't know, we have to assume that it's possible, I think, and err on the side of caution. So yes.
So how do we make a difference in the industry?
I think we have to be able to see these things more. I think it almost goes with, because we do a lot of training about the brain, don't we? We learn all about the brain, and now we learn a bit about the nervous system when we do our behavioral work. So we learn all these things, but how much do you get taught about how dogs move? And how many of your dogs go for walks every day? People take them to agility. They take them cycling and take them with them on the lead. They do how many people do 12-mile hikes at weekend and nothing during the week? It's a big part of their life is activity. And if we don't understand that bit, I mean, this comes back to what you're advising them for training. So when you're advising them on exercise and what they should be doing, how does that impact? Is it benefiting them? Is it giving you more information? Are you just trying to calm them down? If you know this stuff, you can really do more to use their exercise and what the management things that you're setting up to help them, to give you more information and to help them with their problems as well. So you can do a lot more if you have that knowledge. This is what I've come to realize.
So us trainers have that knowledge. And then second would be making subliminal, messages as well as social media, using that to bring more awareness of the possibility of pain being a root to a lot of the behavior issues. And even starting off, if you're a dog trainer that works with puppies, just telling these kind of stories can make people aware in the world. So one of the things that we can all do together is get education. Julie does have an ebook that I can get out there that has just the questions, the things to look for, which if you have and you start practicing with your own clients right now, you can start doing the light bulb moment yourself of, oh, wow, that does look different. Oh, well, look how you can start just even looking at it instead of looking at the dog barking, the dog not staying in place, the dog jumping, pulling on lead, because that's what our eyes are currently trained to do. So if we shift that focus and focus on, let's look at these things let's take 60 days and say, for the next 60 days, I'm going to also focus on these things. So by having a checklist from Julie, That's going to be impactful. If we all decide this is what we're going to do over the next 6, almost like a challenge of practice, right?
Yeah.
The next thing that we can all do as an industry is get this education. So if Julie, you can put together a small, inexpensive program where we can all get in and learn this from you. I want to know, what could this possibly mean? If my dog is moving in this and has the double hop, what are the 5 different things that it could be? Not that what it is, because we can't do that, but at least I'm aware. And that's all going to transfer over to our own clients. And then if anyone wants to move on to even really focus on this, then if you have if you finish up your, your big training course, you're going to have a lot more trainers in the world that'll be able to do what you're doing. And we can be the gap between, for dogs that have issues with reactivity and they're not, you don't want them to go to the vet 5 or 6 times. If we can get all of this information and then just one time to the vet with this information, we're going to see a lot less stressed out dogs, and we're going to see a lot of, hopefully, some progress in this arena.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly that. Because we need a lot of eyes on these dogs. And think about all the dogs in rescue and how they ended up there. Is that why they're there? And once they're there, they're going to keep having this problem every time they're rehomed. If somebody along in that chain doesn't catch it and say, oh, we have a problem. So I just feel that it now has to be part of what we do as an assessment, gathering that information as well as what we normally ask, building in, gathering some information about how they move and looking at that as well. And going into a case, well, I actually go into cases now expecting it to be there because it just is every time
Almost
I
always
see
there.
something.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're always in huge pain, but I have to acknowledge that it may be affecting them, and we need to know. Because when very subtle signs can be from really bad hip dysplasia, you have to wonder. So, yeah, I think we need to build it into our assessments as a standard.
I love that.
I think that's going to have to happen, or else we're missing a lot of things.
I love that. Let's build it into our standards. Yeah, absolutely.
And we are the people that spend how many hours with these dogs? We are the people that can get people this information. The vets can't do that. They can't spend hours with the dogs. We do it anyway. So while you're there, why not use your time to be collecting? Take a bit of video, gather some information, add some extra questions into a checklist, look at little pointers, just do some extra observations. There's a lot to think about when we're doing assessments, I know, but it gets built in after a while that you automatically look at things. So having a checklist first just gives you a little bit of a streamlined way of doing it. So you might be ticking boxes for the first few weeks that you do it, but do it with every dog. Assume it might be there.
I know you have a checklist, but does anyone still use a consultation form? I do a consultation form digitally because I want to, have all that information. But yeah, we should have a consultation form that I can make, put a quick template together on Canva and send out so that people can add that little thing there.
Yeah, all right. And get hold of the vet history. If you can get the vet history.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And read through that. And make sure you get a full vet history. It's hard to get. You have to keep asking. They send you one page. No, all the way back to the beginning. And if there might be, because you've asked them if they ever had an injury or an accident, they say no. Then you look at when they were a 6-month-old puppy, they fell off the couch or they fell down the stairs, they trapped their foot. Add it into your observations.
I just pulled a vet report from that dog, that Buddy that I just rehomed, and the pet parent. Anyways, I was able to get the full thing from 8 weeks old, even all the blood work, everything. And It was really good because we found a high, was it kidney? I can't remember what we found. High, the numbers looked a little off 3 times in a row. And she changed the food just recently, did blood work, and we noticed the numbers came down. So long story short, it's really good to have the everything that you can about that dog, injuries, why they came in, teeth, like all of that stuff, because it is relevant. It will.
And people forget. They forget what
They
happened
totally
years
forget.
ago.
Yeah.
Have they had gut problems? Have they had indigestion problems? Did they when they were puppies? And they had medication to manage it ever since. So they don't think it's there anymore. There's a lot of things you can find out by just reading everything.
Well, Julie, thank you so much for spending Monday morning here. And hopefully, guys, this was helpful. And I would love to let's bring a discussion in or something maybe next month, or if you're ready to have some kind of class that we can all do together, that would be fantastic. But the checklist that you have, we'll get that uploaded somewhere where they can download it on their own and use it for clients to just practice. And if you've got questions, if you're watching the replay to this, just put questions in here. And Julie, do me a favor, if you can answer any quick questions here. Also put in your information. I know you don't want a lot of people sending you over their dogs, but it was very inexpensive. I'm going to tell you this straight up, Julie. It was very inexpensive for me to bring you on board and do a virtual assessment with my dog. I'm going to ask you to do the same for Bandit, because I found come here, Bandit. I'll just show you really quick, but I'll go through the proper paperwork, but hold on. Come here, Bandit. So just recently, check out this weird pattern. Oh, I don't know if you can see it on here. Where is your butt? Is it here? Okay, so this is all bare, and it looks different than the other two sides, and it goes along his spine, and it goes all about an inch away from his tail.
Right.
It's very bizarre. So it's a pattern that has changed in his hair. And it almost looks like it got burned down the middle, but they're still further. And I can't for the life of me figure out why, or how it's there. So new assessment for you, new client for you. So Julie, if you could do me a favor and drop your information, go ahead and go into this canine behavior and biz club. Drop your link to your information. I'm going to get that from you, which I have, and I'll upload it to YouTube under the description if you guys want to get a hold of her personally and use her expertise. She's amazing. I know she's probably backed up, but if you are struggling with your own personal dog, I want you to go through this experience like I did working with Julie, just so you can feel what it feels like on this end. It was really great experience, and it's something that I really want every trainer to kind of acknowledge, like, hey, this can really impact us, all of us. If we can really take this education in, this would be really good.
Yeah.
But Julie, thank you. Everyone else, tell her thank you, because this is so useful for our industry. And we are going to have a challenge over the next 60 days. Let's just make a point to put this in part of our consultation. I love that.
Yeah, just start looking at your dogs differently. Yeah. How can you do that?
Awesome. All right, guys. So that is Monday morning. Next Monday, I have a visitor who is a TikTok queen. So I will post a little bit about her in just a minute later on this afternoon, and post what time and all of that information. But thank you again, Julie. You're wonderful. We will see you again soon, and look out for that link. Yeah, you're welcome. This is always fun discussions and no presentation. I loved it. It's just a fun talk and chat about this topic and make a difference on how we can all do this together. Yeah. All right, guys. See you next week. Take care.
Bye-bye.